Hello and welcome to another episode of the All For One podcast. I'm your host, Jamie.Lowe, and today is a really exciting episode. Lots to get through today, so we'll get straight into it. However, today's episode is brought to you by mydiabetes.diet, so stick around because in the middle of the show, in the ad break, I'll be giving you a code which will give you 75% off a 6-month diet plan to help you with your blood sugar control. But my guest today is Type 1 adventurer Gore, who says that T1D is not an excuse. And that's something, Jerry, that you've pretty much lived by your whole life, because just flicking on your website a little earlier this morning, it's quite an impressive CV, and your adventuring began at a very early age. But when did type 1 diabetes come into the mix?
I've got to say, and I don't make any bones about it, but I'm late onset. So I got it age 40. I got it in 2001, 31st of January, a day I remember very well, and my memory is rubbish. But yeah, it knocked me for six because, you know, I've always lived a pretty action, fast-paced lifestyle. And suddenly people were going, well, you know, think twice before you go outdoors to a restaurant, you know, and before you eat that bowl of whatever, just think how many grams of carbohydrates might be in it. And I'll munch through, you know, acres of food in a day, you know, prior to diabetes. And I chew on cereal bars, whatever could keep my energy going for whatever I was doing that day or week. And suddenly it all kind of stopped. And people said, take it easy. I've never taken it easy in my life. And so basically, I decided I needed to understand this condition, but I never, ever thought it would stop me. And it would change me. So go on.
You began your sort of adventuring at 19. And I like that you do a lot of adventuring in colder climes. I'm particularly a fan of cold weather, but I understand what you're saying. The fact that you've lived this life doing whatever you wanted, pretty much whenever you wanted, then all of a sudden, you know, you were told to maybe not do that anymore. But I think that maybe is one of the flaws in diabetes management in general, is that it is in fact quite general, and you know, not many people. Being diagnosed early on in life would necessarily think they'd be able to climb a mountain, which we'll come on to later, I'm sure. But you'd already knew that you could. So this was just another thing to consider, I think, and you managed to work it out anyway.
And that's really why I say diabetes is not an excuse. We're all world class at making excuses. Every person on the planet. We're brilliant and we do it every day. And I try and fight against that because I find that kind of limits my horizons. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Diabetes was something else to overcome. And so you have to do the research, you have to do the tests, you have to get into it, and have to find out what you're able to do within the confines of this condition. But it was kind of opened up to me by one of the first things I heard was learn to adapt your diabetes to your life, not your life to your diabetes. And in a way, that says everything.
Yeah, it's like, so I interviewed, he's called Gavin. He's the diathlete, and he does a lot with, and he told me something that stuck with me ever since. And it was diabetes isn't the enemy. And I think what he was meaning with that is that it shouldn't control you. You should control it, or at least get it to cooperate with you if you can.
And I think that's also really important. Your attitude to something defines everything. If you think diabetes is an enemy, guess what? You'll hate it and you'll fight it, rather than say, actually, it's a friend. It might not be a really best friend, but it's a friend. It's right next to you every single day of your life, every minute, every hour. So change your attitude towards it, because if you're just fighting something, that just goes on and it gets bitter and nasty. And I think your attitude to it is really important.
And, you know, as we'll talk more later, you've seen a lot of the world where diabetes management isn't so great and accessible. So putting that into context, you can see maybe that people who do have access to great healthcare are maybe squandering that a little. Maybe, you know, without being, you know, too aggressive in that, maybe they don't understand that there are opportunities out there. But I think that's your general MO. But we'll start, I think, chatting about some of the incredible things you've done. Let's run through them briefly. So it started even before 19, like I said earlier, 16, and just take us through some of the highlights.
So 16, I climbed the highest mountain in Europe, Mont Blanc, 1977. Just shows how old I am. And I thought, yeah, this was fun. This was cool. I was in a little hut at, you know, like 3,000 meters with a bunch of older, snoring, frankly, quite smelly people. And I thought, yeah, it's not that romantic. But then when you get up and you get in the mountains and the sun comes up and you see the glory in front of you, it changes your life. And you feel like you're an astronaut on planet Earth. And I like feeling like an astronaut on planet Earth. And it makes me feel great. And nature for me is the biggest panacea. It's the biggest help. And I try to engage with nature all the time. And mountains are obviously a big part of nature. So yeah, so I started with Mont Blanc. Then I did expeditions to Southeast Iceland, traversed the ice cap, went to Norway. Then in 1980, I went to California to work, just to get enough money to go into northern Canada to build a log cabin and canoe the Mackenzie River, the dangerous river. And I was in Sausalito, just across the Golden Bridge from San Francisco. And I went hiking for afternoon. I was working as a cook in a restaurant. And there's these guys mucking around on a bit of rock. And I go, oh, what's this? They go, hey, man, this is bouldering. I go, okay, so what's that about? They go, well, you just climb a meter or so above the ground. There's no ropes, there's nothing. You just move around. It's very physical. And I go, well, that's fun. They go, yeah, but the source, the grail is the valley. I go, oh, so what's the valley? And they go, well, Yosemite. You don't know about Yosemite? I said, no. So anyway, next weekend, I get chucked in the back of a Datsun pickup. I'm chucked in there. I drive 4 hours. It gets to midnight. And it's really cold. And I've just got a T-shirt on. And the guy takes me out of the car. We just have a pee stop. And it's a full moon. And he takes me around the corner of the road. And by the light of a full moon, he showed me the southwest face of El Capitan, which is this huge 1,000-meter wall. If any of you guys have seen Free Solo, that's the one that the guy solos, And I fell in love. Basically, that was it, done, smitten. And I decided then to really get into climbing. By 22, I climbed 7,000 meters, new routes in the Himalaya. Then I was climbing out new routes in like Patagonia and Greenland. I got into all the different disciplines of climbing, not just rock, not just ice, but big wall. When you're on a big face, you're hanging those tents, like called portal edges for up to 2 weeks at a time in places like Baffin Island, where it's minus 25. The only thing you see for 6 weeks are polar bears. And also, Himalayan stuff, big hills, big mountains. And I like mountain biking. I like walking. I like all the things associated with mountains. It makes me feel alive, and it gives me energy.
Mm-hmm. And it gives you a sort of great platform, I find exercise does, to have overall general better blood glucose management. I know in lockdown, it's completely changed for me, diabetes management, but getting back into exercising and back into the gym and getting in the steps, it really does make it a little easier. So I'm guessing, you suffer with more hypos than hypers being so active, and, all those cereal bars definitely come in handy, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're totally right. I go low a lot. I'm not proud of it. My HB1C is like 6.5, which isn't bad because every day is different. I spend a whole day in front of a computer or a whole day hiking up a mountain, whatever. I live in the French Alps. Every day is different. But hypos are definitely an issue, and I have a lot of things to manage that. And I still think that exercise is really important to manage your glucose control. I think every person with diabetes should do 30 minutes minimum a day. It doesn't have to be high pace, but it's exercise. And everybody goes, well, exercise. What is exercise? Exercise simply is something that increases your heart rate. So if you spend an hour gardening and your heart rate stays the same, you haven't really exercised. You've got to make it beat a little bit faster. And I think 30 minutes of that a day is just the base for good control.
I mean, I've gone low cooking a meal because of all the different parts of the kitchen and the mixing and the chopping, and so that might say more about my cooking skills than I'd like to reveal. But you're right. Just something that raises the heart rate, and it's consistency, I think, which is also key. And in fact, low intensity exercise is almost better for leveling out your blood sugar levels, because well, if you go to the gym, you know what just 20 minutes of lifting weights can do. It'll send you on a massive spike in the right conditions. But aside from hypos, you've suffered with a few other things. I mean, I've got them in front of me here. I won't list them off, but they include avalanches, lightning strikes, and broken backs. But I think I did pretty much list them off there. So you've dealt with a lot of stuff. So tell me, what's it like being struck by lightning?
Yeah, pretty electrifying. I got fully blown up, as did my partner. I got 15 cigarette holes in my right leg. My partner had a double hand spread of burns across his back. He was fully paralyzed. Wow. We're on top of a remote mountain, miles from anywhere. No food, no water. We'd opened a new route on the biggest face in the Canadian Rockies, and we were pretty frazzled and crispy around the edges. Yeah, it wasn't great.
Wow. And then, is there like a feeling that you get, or is it just like a burning, or did you even know what had happened until it had already happened?
Because I've done, military training, ex-Royal Marines, I'd kind of been used to or understood bomb blasts and that sort of stuff. Yeah. And that's kind of effectively what happened. You actually get blown up. We're on a little patch of rock, 5 foot square, and we just threw the tarpaulin of our tent over us to protect us. It's like 8 o'clock at night. Lots of wind, lots of snow, lots of lightning all around us, like you're in the throne rooms of the mountain gods, but they're really angry with you and they're screaming at you. And then we hunker down. We hold this fabric over us, and we go. We've escaped. We've got some protection. We're not so cold now. We can survive. And then suddenly, bang! And we're like lifted up, and then just dropped. And as we got struck, the wind came in. It blew off the fly sheet. So now we're completely, exposed to the elements. We've got our burns, and there's a lot of smoke because all this smoke is burnt flesh and burnt fabric, right?
Wow.
And I just remember that very vividly. It's like someone really attacked us. They really hated us. They really wanted to blow us up, and they kind of did, And then you've got to fight for survival, and you've got to get yourself back together mentally as well as physically. And then we had the whole descent. It's a big story, but it just kind of confirmed my thoughts. It's all about the top 4 inches. It's all about that. If you freak out on a little ledge with no protection in the middle of a storm, no food, no chance of rescue, you're going to die. If you keep it together and say, okay, step by step, I need protection. I need to look after my mate. I need to get the fluid going in our bodies. I need to drink, and you start doing it. Then you survive, and that's how you have to deal with anything that life throws at you. Don't panic. Step by step approach.
And obviously, like we just saw there, knock after knockdown, you get back up there and you're still adventuring. And I wonder that, I guess that's why you're so public about it, because you want to prove that you can do that. If you can climb a mountain, if you can survive a lightning strike, then I can go for a run without worrying about my diabetes.
Totally. My whole thing is, I'm really not great. I've been tested in every way. I've done a sports science degree at Loughborough. I know what my VO2 max is. I know how strong I am. All these things. I'm not superhuman on the scale at all in anything. But what I do is have a go. I do my best. I do the most amount of research, lots of testing, and I'm not afraid to have a go, and I'm not afraid to fail. And I think that message is really important. We're all afraid of failure, and failure really holds us back, or the fear of it. Whether it's posting a picture on social media, or writing something, or saying something to a friend, we're frightened of the reaction, and we're frightened of failure. If we can overcome that, it releases so many more opportunities, and we can do so much more than we ever thought we could.
Absolutely. Well, you are listening or watching, in fact, to the All for One podcast, where I am speaking today to Jerry Gore. You'll have noticed, if you are watching on YouTube, that there are two letters and one number on Jerry's t-shirt, A4D. So stick around after the break and we'll be talking all about action for diabetes. Hi guys, me again. Just wanted to remind you of today's sponsor, My Diabetes, who have an absolutely massive offer for you guys. Just head to www.mydiabetes.diet/all-4-1. And if you use the coupon code ALL4ONE, that's ALL4ONE, then you'll get 75% off the 6-month plan. All of those links will be in the description, all the show notes. So if you're interested, please check them out. And there's some other ways to support the show if you'd like. You can go to patreon.com/jamie.lowe TV. For as little as £1 there, you can get access to exclusive content and be in direct daily communication with me. Or if you fancy supporting a different way, then you can go to shop.spreadshirt.co.uk/broken-pancreas-gang, where you can get your hands on t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and other stuff with designs that I made myself. This funky little freestyle Libra design is my favorite right now, and if you fancy helping me out, I'd be more than grateful. It's going to help me make better and more frequent content after all. Hello, welcome back to the All for One podcast. Jamie Lowe here, speaking to Jerry Gore. So Jerry, we heard all about your adventuring in the first part of the show, but I guess one of your biggest challenges that you've undertaken in your life so far is to bring better healthcare to people like us that really need it in certain parts of the world. So tell us where the charity came from.
Okay, so I'm going to cut to a little scenario in Cambodia in 2013, and I was working at the time for another charity, and I was raising money to help children with type 1 diabetes in emerging countries. So these are people who can't afford insulin, who, if they could get to a hospital, might be 700 miles away in plus 40 heat on the back of a moped. When they got there, the doctors and nurses wouldn't have insulin and wouldn't even understand the condition that they were presented with. You have to kind of get your head around that. It's a hard one. And anyway, I was out in Cambodia, and I was introduced to a family. We were doing a patient visit. We knew about the clinic that was helping them. They were really suffering because they did know about diabetes, but they didn't have any real support. And they're almost giving their own wages to buy insulin. And it was sporadic, and it often wasn't the right insulin. And they took me to this little, it's a thatched house. The walls are so thin you could just knock them with your hand. In the middle of the jungle, it's plus 40 degrees, 100% humidity. There's no electricity. And this little kid, she's like 11 years old, and she's got type 1 diabetes. And the clinic are just about keeping her alive. And she's got her insulin. And her insulin are in those little bottles, mixed hard. I don't know if you come across it. So it's a mix between short and long-term insulin. No. It's mixed. It's cloudy. And she has to draw it up in a syringe and then inject it. And the syringe is like big, right? This girl's really young, and she's in the jungle and blah, blah, blah. Every day, because there's no fridge, she has to crawl under her house to go to a little earthen pot sunk in the ground to get out her insulin, where it's kept a little bit cooler, take that out and inject. She risks rat bites, snake bites, poisonous spiders, just to get her insulin out. That's before she injects, and she's got to clean herself, and that might be difficult to find clean water. She hasn't got any swabs. And this girl is just the loveliest, chirpiest person, because as far as she's concerned, this insulin is her savior. And the family, are very, very happy that she's not just becoming a skeleton and dying, because children without diabetes basically take 6 to 8 months to die, and they become like a concentration camp victim because the body attacks everything, and they just become just skeletons. And she was almost at that stage of dying, and then she got the insulin, and then she just started to fly like a little bird. And it was amazing how she would just chirpy and happy, as were the parents, as were the carers around her. And I thought, those are the people who need help. Those are the people who I can really dedicate my life to. Because frankly, as I think you've alluded to, in our country, in our world, we have everything. I mean, we have everything, from podcasts to webinars to insulin to clinics to forums to everything. And she has an earthen pot under her thatched little shelter.
Yeah. And so, and was that what set the wheels in motion when you saw
that and a series of similar sort of incidents? I was earlier on in about 2004. I was in Madagascar. I was trying to climb the hardest big wall on each of the 7 continents, and the biggest wall, the biggest rock face in Africa is actually in Madagascar. So you're down in Madagascar. It's an amazing country, very poor, very basic life. And we just climbed this 800-meter wall, and it was very technical. We're talking about little edges, like 2-centimeter edges that you pull up on, and it's just a sheer face for almost a kilometer. And your feet are just smearing on almost nothing, and it's very hot. And we climbed this face, and we thought that was hard. And then we had, like a day off, if you like, and we went to a local market just to get into the local life and stuff. Everybody's super laid back, and it's great. We go to this market, and there's all the various stalls and stuff. And I was struck by one stall. There was a lady there. She's probably, 38, 39, something like that. She's got 4 kids, and she's got a tarpaulin about 2 foot square. And on that tarpaulin was like a couple of tomatoes, a cucumber, and some herbs. I didn't even know what they were. And she would expect to sell that lot for $1. So that's like about 60p in our money, yeah? And with that money, she would then buy food to feed her family until the following week's market. And when she'd sell, hopefully, more produce. And then it suddenly hit me, OMG, what would it be like if one of her children got type 1 diabetes and they needed to buy insulin and needles and healthcare? Answer, they wouldn't survive, they'd die.
It must be a helpless situation. You mean parents must just feel utterly helpless in that situation because there's not a lot that they can do.
And it affects the whole community because they see these little kids literally just fading in front of their eyes. And it's traumatic because it's not like in a week, it can take months. And it's really, really painful. And just, it can really disrupt a whole community. And that's, it's experiences like that really said, I could work for JDRF, I could give money to research. But I'm worried about people today, people who are dying today, who don't need to. Insulin, we kind of take for granted. We stick it in our bodies, 5-6 times a day, whatever. But it's really a life-giving product, hormone. And people need it to live. And it's kind of a human right, to me, a basic one. And so that's what I wanted to do. And that's why we set up Action for Diabetes. And we've focused in Southeast Asia. I'm working with Charles Toomey. He's the other co-founder. And Charles's background is in pharmaceuticals. So he first of all worked for Lilly, second largest insulin producer in the world. So he knows all about, drugs and buying and purchasing. And we also then got Fiona Oy involved. She worked for Novo Nordisk, so she knows about distribution, she knows about insulin, she knows about type 1. And then we started working country by country and seeing where the need was. And we would work with clinics because it's much easier to work with an established medical organization than try and build a hospital, build a clinic. And then because Charles could do this, because he's a businessman at the end of the day and he can buy product in really quickly, he could buy insulin and test strips and glucometers very, very, very cheaply. And so we were buying this stuff in, and our charity is based on business principles. We monitor and track every strip and every drop of insulin that we distribute. There's a lot of fraud in these countries. I mean, huge amounts of fraud. And so you have to do that, because if people get hold of something they can sell, they'll sell it. And so we control it. It's very tightly run. We're at like 95% efficiency in terms of the money that's donated goes to the children. And we're now in 7 different countries. We look after about 650 children. And by the end of this year, we should be at about 800.
Wow. And it's of course, you provide directly the insulin, the glucometers and the test strips, but you also work, like you said, with the clinics to, I guess, just give that education that wasn't there before. I mean, it's shocking to hear that if, a family did manage to make it to a clinic and the health worker practitioner didn't really know what they were dealing with or how to treat it.
So one of the great heroes in our charity is a doctor, our chief medical officer, called Dr. May Eng. She's from Malaysia. She's worked in the NHS, for the last 20 years. She's an amazing woman. She is putting together basically a healthcare program, all digital, all online. The platform's called Hello Type 1, for healthcare professionals in Southeast Asia. And because of Charles's contacts, we can do it in local language, Khmer or Vietnamese or wherever. And we're literally educating and training nurses and doctors so they can then help their patients. And as you know, I think it's only cutting edge here, and it's certainly not in Southeast Asia. Healthcare team for type 1 diabetes is a big team. You need an endocrinologist, you need a nurse, you need a psychologist, you need a nutritionist. There's a lot of elements of it. And we're starting to produce that in Southeast Asia, in places like Myanmar, where literally our doctors are getting shot at if they're found distributing insulin. It's really badly in this bad situation. Lots of challenges. And so, that's why we're changing the face of diabetes healthcare in a huge area of the world.
And, it's a lot to undertake, but you seem to have approached it in the right way by, focusing on, like you said, the efficiency and the scalability. And I think that's really important, when it's such a big situation, which need immediate action, that you're doing it in that way. And it's quite really efficient. I was just looking at the figures. Of course, it takes a lot to run, but you sort of boil it down to every penny spent. You can see from the documents where it's all going, and it was surprisingly affordable for someone in my financial conditions to be able to support directly someone in need. Could you just break it down how that all works?
Yeah, and we do Save a Child programs where either individuals or companies can sponsor a child. Each of our children in gross costs us $500, so about £300 a year. That's their medication, that's their test strips, that's their education, and that's their kind of like weekly mini Zooms and getting people together and talking to them. So that's it, £300 a year. It's not a huge price, and that will keep a child alive for 1 year. As you said, it's all about sustainability, because you can't just give insulin to a kid and then, a couple of years or months later go, do you know what? We don't have any more money. So we have to build this on sustainability. And I've got to take my hat off to Charles Toomey. This is a retired entrepreneur, philanthropist, but really, really high-level businessman. And he's put that procedure in place. So, we know that if we're looking after 650 kids now, we will be able to continue to do that. And that's really important, because you just can't take away funding from a child, because if you do in those sort of countries, honestly, they die. It's a great team, and we decide to go small and focused, rather just kind of generally spread the net and say, well, we're going to help the whole of Africa or something. We drill down into particular areas, and we only expand country at a time if we've got an in-country partner who can work with us.
Mm-hmm. And I think I find it quite admirable of the approach that you've taken, I think, because there's a lot of big organisations with lofty goals, but if you wanted to track your donation, it's very, very hard to do so. And I think we can see here that it's not paying for first class flights for CEOs and things like that. So that's really great. You are listening to the Awful One podcast. We've heard about Action for Diabetes and what it does, but Jerry is undertaking a massive fundraising challenge. So you'll hear about that right after this break. Hi guys, me again. Just wanted to remind you of today's sponsor, My Diabetes, who have an absolutely massive offer for you guys. Just head to www.mydiabetes.diet/all-4-1. And if you use the coupon code ALL4ONE, that's ALL4ONE, then you'll get 75% off the 6-month plan. All of those links will be in the description, all the show notes. So if you're interested, please check them out. And there's some other ways to support the show if you'd like. You can go to patreon.com/jamie.lowe TV. For as little as £1 there, you can get access to exclusive content and be in direct daily communication with me. Or if you fancy supporting a different way, then you can go to shop.spreadshirt.co.uk/broken-pancreas-gang, where you can get your hands on t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and other stuff with designs that I made myself. This funky little Freestyle Libra design is my favorite right now, and if you fancy helping me out, I'd be more than grateful. It's going to help me make better and more frequent content after all. Yeah, no, really good. I'm actually impressed how efficient this episode has ended up being, because sometimes I could just chat and it goes on for hours and the conversation really has no structure, but this one seems to be going very, very well, so that's good. Hello, you are watching or indeed listening to the Awful One podcast. I'm Jamie Lowe, and today I'm chatting to type 1 diabetic adventurer and charity co-founder Jerry Gore. So Jerry, we've heard all about what your charity does, where the money goes, but I think you've raised, is it 400,000? I don't know whether that's dollars or pounds so far, but you're trying to raise a bit more. What are you doing to get some fundraising going?
So my challenge this summer is to attempt to climb K2. K2 is the second highest mountain in the world. Everest is 8,848 meters high. K2 is 8,611 meters high. So basically 200 meters difference. At that sort of altitude, it's the same. But if you can imagine, Everest is more of a plateau with zigzags going up. K2 is a pyramid. North, south, east, and west, it's got sheer walls. And as soon as you're on it, it's steep and you start climbing. And so you've got to use your ice axes to penetrate the ice to pull up. And wow. That's what gives you vertical movement. And I'm going to show you a little, this could be my lifesaver. So this is an ice axe. So, you put that into the ice. It might go in maybe sort of 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch, and you pull up on that. That's what keeps you from falling down. So at altitude, when literally every step is slow and hard, you need light kit. This whole ice axe only weighs 200 grams. So that's like a little tin of fish, right? It's super light. It's not the strongest axe, but it's strong enough. It's strong enough to bang into the ice. I can front point. So these are two little points that come out at the end of my boots. These are my boots. They might blow you away, but they will take me to minus 40 quite happily. They're insulated, and I put crampons, claws at the bottom of these, and the two claws push out about an inch in front. So I stick that into the ice, and then I pull up with my ice axe like this. It could be minus 40. It could be, honestly, plus 10. Big temperature changes, but it's steep. And you're sort of clawing your way up this mountain with rope, with ice axes and stuff, and with obviously a team. But that's what makes K2 so hard. With Everest, you're in a trench. It's quite a deep furrow, and you're walking effectively. Yes, there are some steep sections, but you're basically pulling yourself up a rope, and you're following zigzags up the mountain. Whereas with K2, it's steep. And of course, then you've got the wind, and then you've got to keep your insulin from freezing and your glucometer in a little bag from getting too cold.
And I mean, I've told the story before, so I won't do it again. It's very easy to freeze your insulin. I was in a zoo called Polar Park in Narvik in Norway, and a storm set in, and of course we all ran to the cabins to get coffee and all that sort of stuff, but I left my insulin supply, or some of it, the rest of it was back at the hotel, thank God, but some of it in the crew van, and it was buried in a bag and all that sort of stuff, and still the insulin didn't survive. It was quite a bad snowstorm. It was quite really driving snow and all that sort of stuff, and our poor little van had really taken a few beatings by that point, so it wasn't as airtight as it was when we got first in Norway. So yeah, I mean, if I can manage to freeze some insulin that was, or at least kill it from cold weather in relatively normal conditions, well, not normal for people that live in the middle of England, but normal for people that do live in cold climates, then how are you going to do it? Are you just going to keep it close to your body the whole time?
These are my insulated pouches I keep my pens in. Yes. So my pens go in here. These then go in a one-piece down suit that's got specially made pockets, and then I have another down suit, and these down suits are pretty big. When I say a down suit, I mean they're big. And don't forget, this is an outer jacket. This is not the inner down suit. But this little pocket goes inside the whole lot, so it's warm.
I think I've worn something similar to that when I was dog sledding. It's I think you're probably, that's probably right. They did tell me it was a mountaineering jacket when they put it on me, and it's quite, I found it, maybe that I got the wrong size, but I found it quite difficult to sort of maneuver. I was dog sledding, so all I needed to do was that. But you're going to be picking and stamping into the mountain. Is that one quite easy to move in?
I mean, again, it's like all these things. If you do it a lot and you practice with it and you test, it gets easier. But one-piece down suits are kind of as big and as bulky as they sound. You can't move very quickly, and it's very cold. And also, above 8,000 meters, it's called the death zone because you're losing more cells than you're producing. So you're all kind of groggy. It's a little bit like being in a constant hypo, and you're not really quite there together, and yet you've got to focus really well. I also just want to draw attention to this. This is my glucometer, and I keep it in a special insulated bag, and I use the Contour Next. I find it the most durable, and the battery lasts the longest. It's just simple. I could have a pump, I could have Dexcom, but I find it altitude tubing and stuff, you get occlusions, blockages. Keep it simple. That's my thing. And this works. I can be on a vertical ice face with one hand, and I can still test because the strips go in through the base. And wow. and then I the finger pricker is just attached. So I don't drop anything, right? And it just works. It's simple, but it works. And I'm not saying it's a recipe for success, but it works for me. And I've done a lot of testing with it. And I've climbed a lot of ice and a lot of mountains with this system. But yeah, it's definitely another challenge.
Yeah, and for everyone who's listening on their phones or whatever to this podcast, you're going to have to head to YouTube to see all of Jerry's kit in its full glory, because those boots did kind of blow me away. They were kind of like sort of snowboarding boots and a ski boot all sort of merged into one, but I'm sure that sort of stuff is tried and tested. But what's the closest thing you've done? You mentioned you climbed a lot of ice. What is the closest sort of similar scenario that you've been in that you'll be experiencing when you're climbing K2?
So I've opened new routes, which is much harder than doing a commercial trip on a regular route where there's rope on it. But I've opened new routes on 5,000 meter peaks, 6,000, 7,000, and even 8,000 meter peaks. So I've had a lot of experience of climbing in the higher altitudes. And I'm the only type 1 diabetic guide in the Himalayas. I've guided 9 people to the summit of Chilatsi, which is 6,400 meters in Nepal. That's the most technical commercial climb you can do. And, you know, I've been doing this game for many years. So I've got quite a lot of experience of high altitude. But the thing about altitude is every expedition almost is different. You can be a world-class climber, done lots of trips, go to, say, Everest Base Camp and go, do you know what? Body's not acclimatizing. I have to go home. That can happen. Altitude, extreme altitude is a really weird thing. And it can affect people in many different ways. One of my biggest worries as a diabetic is retinal hemorrhaging. So as you know, your retina as a type 1 is really in danger anyway. And then you can get this bleeding from the retina because of the intense pressure at altitude. So you have to be really careful, have to have your eyes tested, you have to maintain good control. It's definitely something to be aware of.
Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of planning's gone into this, so and you don't seem worried, you seem almost excited by it, so I don't think there's any concerns there. But I mean, a challenge like this, it's going to draw a lot of attention, which I guess is one of the main reasons for doing this. Is it an awareness drive to really sort of take the charity up a notch, or it, you know?
I mean, my first thing is to say to people with a chronic condition, but especially with diabetes, it's not an excuse unless you want it to be. I could think of so many excuses not to go to Pakistan this summer, even before I get to COVID. And yet I will go, I will have a go, and it might end in tears, but you've got to try things. And I think that's what makes us human. We have a go. And whether it's just, do you know what? I'm going to try and go to a restaurant today because I'm not sure about the food, but I'm going to have a go. Whether it's that or whether you want to attempt the hardest climb in the mountain in the world, it doesn't matter. It's relevant to you as a person. Have a go and try and do something and try, you know, and I get to that phrase and it's a bit cliched, but it's try to be the best that you can be, because we've only got we've only got ourselves, and there's so much that we could do. And I think we're all frightened of doing stuff, and what will our friends think, and what will, you know, my parents think, or whatever. At the end of the day, something I've learned, and I'm 60 years old, is, you know, all those people we're worried about, they're not really concerned about what you do. They're really not. They're just not interested. But we think they are, and we're worried about, oh, what will he or she say? Get on with it and do it. And that's really what I'm saying. That's my message. Go out, have a go. I want to talk about diabetes as I go through the expedition. I've got this thing called an InReach. It's a satellite device, and I'll be sending messages back, you know. So that's really cool. I can send messages to anyone. You know, I've got like 4,000 contacts on this. I don't even know how they fit that in that. But you know, I can send messages, and people can follow me on a map through MapShare. And I want to be sending the message, you know, I'm type 1, I'm in this country, northern Pakistan, the Karakoram, think about a sort of a high altitude mountain desert. It's very barren, it's very open. This is the land of snow leopards and huge birds of prey and blue sheep and all sorts of really interesting wildlife, amazing scenery. And the local Baltis, the local Pakistanis are just the most amazing people. Very poor, very basic life, but they're always a smile and they're always there to help you. And I just kind of want to live this journey with people. And so they kind of feel that they can do more in their lives and they shouldn't be held back by they've got this or got this. And my other big thing is I think we're defined by the actions we take, not the challenges that we face. And I think that's really important. So it's about doing something rather than just saying, yeah, I've got a lot of problems. Do you know what? I'm not going to do anything.
Lovely stuff. Well, maybe I got my wires crossed. It's not specifically a charity challenge per se, but it's definitely going to draw loads of eyes in the direction of you and, of course, your massive endeavour, which is the Action for Diabetes charity. So, when's it all taking place? You said the summer. It's kind of summer now, so it's feeling like kind of close.
Yeah, next Monday, 14th. Not Monday like tomorrow. 14th of June. So 2 Mondays time. I fly with my partner Rick Allen, and you can, if you go to if you find Jerry Gore on Facebook. Then you can. There'll be a link for following my map and stuff and seeing where I'm going. And the charity actionfordiabetes.org, that's really easy to find. And yeah, next Monday week, 14th of June, I take a plane from Milan in Italy. I fly to Islamabad. I've got 2 days in Islamabad. Then we go up to Skardu in the Northern Territories. We've got 2 or 3 days there, sorting porters, equipment, food, all that stuff. And then we start a 90-kilometer long walk to base camp. We're doing about 10 kilometers a day. We get to base camp about 5,000 meters, and then we start the acclimatization to help our bodies change and increase the red blood corpuscles so we can generate or transport oxygen much more efficiently around the body. And when we're ready and when there's a good weather window, then we go for it.
Lovely stuff. Well, if you're summiting, if you're starting your journey that soon, then I better get my snow boots on and get editing this episode. I didn't realise it was so close. That's so exciting now. I'm going to be following your journey all the way, and all the links to all that sort of stuff will be included wherever you're watching or listening to this episode. So just click through and we'll hopefully be able to follow Jerry on his journey. So we're going to have to catch up when you get back, but thank you so much for chatting to us today for the All for One podcast. And I would encourage people to check out the Action for Diabetes charity. I didn't know much about it until I started researching for this episode, but I feel like I'm going to be speaking about it quite a lot in the future. So Jerry, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Brilliant, thank you.